I think. Wow, we're live. Yeah,
Right.
we're live here early. Look at the
What, two
time.
minutes? 2 minutes early. Can you
We did.
imagine?
Yeah, we've got an intro here to say, and we're not going to say it because we're early. We're going to say the intro after people
Yeah, it
file
was
in.
just
So
like,
hello to our audience as you're
yeah.
in here early. Oh
Hi.
goodness, we're this is going to be a weird show. We've got our planned topics, but also
Hmm.
uh keep your eyes on Don. He's going to mess with our brains as we
Oh
watch this
yeah,
show.
yeah. It's going to be a spinning good time. Yes.
And is it Grey Dawn? It's Grey Dawn, isn't it?
It is great on. I'm assuming it's great on. Beck, am I great on? We never see we see me
We
as
see
my
Dawn.
normal formed self here on the little TV in front
Yeah,
of
it's
us. But
our private reality is different than the reality that you see, and we apologize for that, and we
yeah,
apologize for Don's avatar getting
it
lost on
is
meta
what it is,
servers.
Ian. It is, and I spent the better part of an entire day this week. I finally decided after last week's show that we had a couple of comments saying it was a little jarring and, a little bit disconcerting that maybe new viewers might be being turned off by my gray personage here. And, I would hope not. I mean, I hope that they come to listen to our insightful, commentary and stuff like that and not watch our beautiful avatars here. But it's not going to work until we get the studio updated. So I am now stuck in gray limbo. There is nothing we're going to be able to do about it until David gets in here and updates the studio. So
Yeah, I saw people got hit with an ad out there, so it's there's a good point in us getting in here early so those people don't miss the intro
yeah,
because of an ad, and we'll probably give it a few more minutes before we do our normal
at least
introduction
it's a
here. It looks like
pizza
people are
ad.
excited for
I
Batman.
mean, pizza sounds really good. It's around lunchtime. So yeah.
The CJ, all right, so CJ says they're out in Memphis right now. I don't know
Hey,
how cold
CJ.
it is in Memphis right now, but I think CJ was the one who was telling me about the Resonite
Hmm.
TARDIS
I think he was.
from
Yeah.
Doctor Who, and I have talked to Kelly here to see if they can go and check it out because I want video of the TARDIS going from world to world.
Oh, that'd be so
I
cool.
want nice stabilized video just showing it, walking out that door to a new world, coming back in, seeing a larger space, going back out to a different world. That's if you can really do that in Resonite, that's a powerful thing. And then I started thinking about all the special episodes of Doctor Who, like can you have two TARDISes in one place?
Ooh.
Because can like I don't know. All right, and for any time traveling viewers out there, it's a good transition. It's not the best way to view us on 2x speed, but we do apparently frequently get viewers trying to
I gotta
catch
try
up to
that.
present.
I gotta hear what like you in the chipmunk voice. That would be kind of fun.
Oh, CJ said they took Kelly on a TARDIS ride. That's
Oh,
amazing. I
cool.
can't wait to see that
Oh,
video.
hey, and we see
Oh,
Arlen out
that's
there.
fantastic.
Saying hello from Columbus, Ohio. I've heard they've got the best internet there. Um, you know, so all
Yeah,
right.
it's well, we've
And
got a cool show
Norway,
coming up here. We're
Simon
going to
says
discuss all that, and it's great seeing so many members over
it
here on
is.
YouTube tuned in early, getting ready for us. And I see Beck has tuned in on their own tag now. That's really cool. To have people identifying themselves now. We've
I
got
like
David
that.
identifying
Yeah, like
themselves.
when I did chat last week with you guys on download. I always like to join the chat and talk to our regulars and be a part of your other show. I mean, it's a fascinating discussion that you guys have on Thursdays, and I encourage everybody if you're not watching it, please. We're starting to fill out the weeks. I mean, it's like we
Yeah.
got Tuesday, we got stuff on Wednesdays now, kind of intermittently. We got download on Thursdays. We've got game stream on Fridays. The random
And
dev stream. It's
and Don did his late night stream. You did your late
late
night
night
stream,
stream.
and the
Yeah,
vibe there, I think you nailed it. I think you nailed
I
it.
liked
So
it. And I think the audience liked it as well. So if everybody's okay with it, I think I'm going to do more of those late night streams because sometimes after my wife goes to bed, I'm just sitting in the living room bored and I just like to still play VR every night. So why not turn on the camera and let our audience just come along with me for that ride,
yeah,
So
it gets us some footage of those games that just
absolutely.
looks really beautiful
Oh, and
throughout
that
the
last
audience. And some
and
people just love to have that in the background, like knowing someone out there is enjoying VR is like a little reminder that
oh yeah.
it's a legitimate thing that people are doing at
That
all
first
hours of
stream
the
too
day.
was great. I mean, I was destroyed, and I know Beck. I know you're out there in the sky, not on voice today, so I apologize. I know that's one that you wanted to see when we did it on Friday. We couldn't get it to work, but I couldn't wait. I got it to work, and that I said, Ian, I've got to stream this. I've got to get this off my brain because I wanted to show people that so bad
Yeah,
because it
I
is Half
totally
Life
get that.
One, and it is near and dear to my heart. And one of the cool things, I went back and watched the chat, as I always do on our live shows. I can't monitor all of it at the same time, but I can go back and watch it. One of the comments on there said that there is also a mod for the Black Mesa recreation of Half-Life 1 with the improved graphics and new voiceovers. So I am chomping at the bit to go find that. We're going to continue to cover mods for a little while on Fridays on the game streams. So
I do want to make a
on the
personal
lookout for
request.
that.
Yeah, I do want to make a personal request based on our viewers out there, and I know Henry enjoys this too. But I would love to see you kill some Nazis on stream at some point.
Oh, Wolfenstein?
Yeah.
Oh no, Wolfenstein's a done deal. I'm already talking to Simon. So one thing, he had to catch a train, but as soon as he gets back, he's told me I am going to get a little early access to Quake 4. Talked about that on the late night stream. So look for that coming up. We're probably going to do another stream like we did on Friday, where we feature 2 or 3 more of Team Beef's mods. So definitely be on the lookout for that, as well as then we're going to branch into some of the other modders as well.
Yeah, I think so. There's a space for that essay for me to like argue that the PC modding scene is more the core of the VR market, like the real VR market, than even Quest's store games. But I'm not ready to start that flame war right now. Like
we'll
a
get
good
into that maybe on a special episode. Like we'll do something and maybe we'll post it Wednesday. We'll talk about mods.
So yeah, but first I want to argue. First, I need to talk about the wiring situation, Don.
Oh God, preach it.
Sorry. All right, so this is maddening, and I got to take, so in a minute here, we'll do our normal intro, we'll get to our show. If you're still streaming in here, share this link out to others, get people into the beginning of the show so they don't have to time travel with us back up to present time. But first, I want to talk about wires and why we hate them and why we love them. And we were just before this show, Don was talking about crawling below his house in order to Ethernet up his headset, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much he's gonna.
So I can get it in the bedroom. I mean, I have to do the show from the bedroom, and it's Wi-Fi. So I am going to brave the bugs, make a hazmat suit, crawl underneath the crawl space. Hopefully, the freezes here in Missouri have killed most of them. Hopefully, there's no snakes up underneath there. Found a little snake in our sunroom the other day.
No, a little hazmat. So Don in Missouri in a hazmat suit, trying to get himself Ethernet, so that you have a better connection when we connect to the studio. So yes, his avatar isn't loading yet. We will get that worked out, but also his voice. We want his voice to be solid. We want his movements to be continuous. We don't. It's like you, our audience, notice the moment there is a single hitch.
Oh yeah.
In a single kilobyte of his movements, like not getting over the internet properly. And we need to fix that. And it's maddening because, okay, so even in my own house, I've got my own Wi-Fi situation, my own Ethernet situation. I'm running ultimately hundreds of feet of Ethernet cable to all my devices here. And that's not even the little essay here that I'm going to take here to complain about. I want to talk about HDMI. And the tyranny that is the DRM locking in my Blu-ray discs from watching with friends. So I've spent the better part of the last year since I got Vision Pro and since I got in this new house trying to set up an office. And I have rearranged this office again and again and again. And each time I rearrange the office, it's based on how long the cords are, basically, to run to the different components. And each time I've had to I actually need a 40-footer here. And now when I get the 40-footer HDMI cord, it now lets me put the Blu-ray player in this room of the house, and the heat that it puts off not bothering me in this room of the house.
Yeah.
While also putting it through a splitter. So right now, my Blu-ray discs pass through an HDMI splitter, and then they go off to a secondary splitter. And from that first splitter, it goes into a second room of the house with a switch that lets me switch between a PC and my Blu-ray discs.
Okay.
And then this multi-splitter, this multiple multi-splitter system I've got basically produces something like 6 outputs from this single Blu-ray player. And these 6 outputs are just to put it to all of my existing screens.
It's crazy.
in case I want to watch it on one of those screens instead of in VR or like if I so there's this situation here. If I want to watch a Blu-ray disc with a friend in the same room, I have to feel like I'm breaking the law in order to strip off the DRM
That's not right.
protections, in order to put the movie on that screen physically right there, displaying for my friend in the same room, and also to have it simultaneously displaying to me inside of a VR headset. All I want to do is to
Yeah.
have the same experience in VR that I'm having physically in the same room. And I got to use a splitter to do that, and then put the splitter through 5 more things if I want to walk from this room to that room to watch the same Blu-ray disc. So that's my current, like I've spent weeks just on HDMI trying to figure out how to do the HDMI layer of this situation where it's getting pretty nice where I can be in VR in my office right here watching this Blu-ray disc, and then I can go to mixed reality, walk out into the living room, and someone else is watching the same movie out there in the living room that I'm watching in here, and we're
Oh,
talking
that's
about
nice.
it even though you're walking from one room to the other. But I've had to use something like 5 splitters and hack this HDMI signal into this ridiculous way in order to take
That's
this
just
physical
insane.
media into
Yeah,
VR with
that's
me.
just insane. There's got to be a better way. It's like, because come on, I mean, anybody could just pop a Blu-ray in, sit on the couch next to your friend, watch it on there. All we want to do is just be able to have that same experience from a couple of different headsets. It's not like you're in a different physical space. It's not like you're on a different network. I don't
Yeah.
know. Sometimes I have issues with DRM. So
All right. Well, I've gotten my essay out. I've gotten my therapy for the week. Thank you for being my therapist this week as I discuss my issues with wiring up my home internet and getting my Blu-ray discs into VR
you
so that
feel
we can all
better?
watch them
Got that
together.
got that off your chest now.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
better. Now we can do our intro. We're ready.
Okay,
All right.
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's roll the beautiful bean footage. All right, this is like we none of that happened. Okay, like this is the start of the show right here. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. And thanks for giving us your time today for VR Gamescast. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by Don Hopper in Missouri, as we discuss what people are playing in VR headsets. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets with last generation meta avatars, and Don is represented as Grey Dawn because we cannot get his texture to load, and we're just waiting to upgrade him to the next generation avatars. We're using hand tracking with built-in microphones, and we've got Beck out there in Canada broadcasting this show for us today. So thank you, Beck, for that. And thank you to our patrons for helping us expand our coverage. That's Richard Meller, Mike Manzano, Holland Podum, that's the developer of Smash Drums, and XR Developer News. Don, what do we have today?
Well, Ian, today we're going to be discussing 3 topics and then kind of ending up on maybe a 4th if we have time. So today, I think we'd start off by getting your thoughts on a really cool spatial storytelling app for Vision Pro that you tried called Ahoy. Then I think we really need to talk about Batman Arkham Shadow crossing the 1 million player mark over the holidays. And then I'm excited to finally tell everyone about my time testing the Roto VR Explorer chair. And so, I've been doing that over the last couple of months, and I think it's finally time that we should recap that. And then I think if there is time, yeah, I think that, maybe we should, I don't know, kind of spend some time talking about our new dev streams that we've been doing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, yeah, we'll get over to those things. I'm not gonna give any explanation for what just happened. For those of you
Not
who
yet.
are on audio stream, you've got no point of context for what just happened. But Don did just spin around in the studio with
You
no
spin me right round.
explanation given. The audience, I'm waiting for them to just ask about it, and I think he's just gonna do that to the studio until
Randomly,
we talk
it's
about
like
that.
I'm like a kid with a toy. I can't stop playing with it. So,
All right, but first let's talk about Ahoy from Picardy on Apple Vision Pro. So this invites you to start again with spatial storytelling. This is just a 16-minute story on Apple Vision Pro headsets. It's not quite $10. There's not a lot of replayability for this experience. So this is one you're probably just going to go into once on Apple Vision Pro. But it's also a great introduction experience to show to others once you've bought it. I'd love to see them expand it or do something more with this. But this was a really, really interesting experience. And I'm going to have to break it down for our audio listeners out there.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand what this experience is. So it's a story that plays out in front of you in a diorama scale. So there's a big dome floating in front of you in space. It's maybe, I don't know, 6 feet wide, and it floats in front of you. And there's pictures or drawings that display on the exterior of the dome for certain parts of the story. And then the dome separates and opens up, and you see inside of it. And there's actually a 3D model of a few landscapes. So there's a scene that plays out on an island, and a little character that gets animated across this little diorama scale 3D model as they're running around the island. There's music in this experience, beautiful, beautiful music that is very memorable, sticks with me afterwards. I've been humming it to myself for a few days now after playing the experience just because of how memorable it is. And then what I loved is we've been requesting and talking on this show about the idea of resizing
Yes.
the spaces. You cannot resize this experience. And about halfway into it, you realize why. Because it also overtakes the skybox
Oh.
with some of the environmental storytelling. So even though this diorama plays out in mixed reality, eventually the clouds start becoming your environment.
Oh,
And you
cool.
start looking around and seeing like the environment that's in here is now spread around a little bit around you in a really delightful way. Overall, it's just a phenomenal use of VR. You can look at things. There's things about the Apple Vision Pro that I look at and go, I want multitasking in your app. I don't want to put my Mac virtual desktop away whenever I go to use your app on an Apple headset. Well, this was an app where that happened. I
Mm-hmm.
also don't like putting all my other apps away. I like having them out when I use this. This app required focus. It
Right.
also, I couldn't go to full VR. I had to stay in my environment. And normally that would be a complaint, but it wasn't here. This just was delightfully engaging the whole time through. I went and reran the experience out in the living room, and you can walk around the model in a standing way and look at it from any different angle. 16 minutes, beautiful little story. I was reminded of Dear Angelica, where
Okay.
Dear Angelica takes over your entire environment. It's this beautiful story from the early
Love
days
that.
of VR, produced, handmade in VR
I was
with,
going to say Tilt Brush, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was Tilt Brush or Quill,
Quill.
because there
No, it
was
was Quill. It was Quill. Yes, it
yes,
was made in Quill.
yeah, so Meta had its own, has its own Quill animation tool, but you go and look at these animations and you can tell they've been made in Quill, and there's a specific look to those creations, some of them at least. But Dear Angelica was this delightful experience, but it spends the whole time sketching this thing out around you, these pictures, while adding audio to it. This starts small in this sphere, in this dome right in front of you, and then slowly spreads out from there into your environment more and more. Just a completely different like end of the mixed reality spectrum when it comes to like there's very little engagement here. You can sort of click to move forward the story at parts, but it's really minimal. It's just
Interesting.
there's a start to the story and end of the story, and it's very short but delightful. I highly, highly recommend it for all the Apple Vision Pro owners out there. I'd love to see it on Quest 3.
I'd love to see it on
And
Quest
I'd love to
3.
see it on Android XR as those headsets come out.
I mean,
But
I'd love
very
to see
cool.
all these experiences cross-platform. I mean, because I love narrative, beautiful things like that. I mean, like you touched on Dear Angelica and some of the Oculus Studio stuff from the early days. Those are just gorgeous experience. Spheres is another one. If you haven't seen Spheres, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there's some delightful, delightful stuff. I leaned in here and was brought to tears, and I laughed at this experience and just love to see more from this creator. I think it's Daniel Jones is a creator attached to this, but there was a whole team with credits listed at the end of this experience. So kudos to that entire team working on Ahoy from Picardy. Loved it. I would love to see more from that team. Email us tips@uploadvr.com.
Oh yeah.
If you've got anything along these realms, I'd love to see I see someone in the comments saying there was something on the Quest store similar to this. We'd love to check out more
Oh
experiences
yeah,
like this. It was
absolutely.
a beautiful little story.
I love narrative. I mean, my favorite games, as we always kind of go back to the day, my favorite games back in the day were the point and click narrative adventures, things like Text Murphy, Myst, Riven, I mean, all of
Oh
those.
yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we've gotten a lot of those in VR. We were actually supposed to get Text Murphy in VR at one point, but the project got scrapped about 8 years ago, unfortunately. But anything that brings narrative and story and makes me somewhat a silent observer, or even better, an interactive participant, is
There's
just
there's a
magical in
couple
VR.
There's a couple things. Claymation. If anyone is doing work with
Ooh,
claymation, please let us know. I know that there's been some classically work. I saw it in labs really,
oh
really
wow,
early on. But if you do claymation just right and 3D
oh
capture
whoa,
it right, it's gonna volumetrically
okay.
just sing.
Jason and the Argonauts VR. I mean,
Yeah,
something
right.
like that. Oh
Start
wow.
filling that stuff in between
Oh, that
the
would be so
rocky
cool.
movements, and you start
Yeah.
getting just amazing stuff. So let us know if you're working on that area. But that would be an amazing. So there was some awkwardness in this experience as the 3D models loaded
Hmm.
to different scenes. So it would be nice if the assets loaded differently, or if there was some other way about that. But yeah, I thought I'd bring up the claymation, and um, there's a lot more that we need to see in this area. Like there's a lot of storytelling that can be done
Oh yeah.
in diorama scale, and it's just a delight.
Oh, I love diorama miniature scale. Is just something magical about that VR. I know, like recently, the game itself got a little long-winded, and it wasn't like
Oh,
the pacing needed to be better. But Walltown Wonders was also another diorama scale, uses your entire environment, as a play element. So
so Jonas is making the call out for Theater Elsewhere. Yes,
okay,
go check
theater
out
elsewhere.
Theater
Hmm.
Elsewhere on Quest. If you're a Quest headset owner, that's where you're going to find similar sorts of creations,
Yes.
a whole bunch of them. And I hate to say similar because they are so different, right? Like this is this has the feel of user generated content, but it's $7, I think is the price they've got it. And you're supporting a team out there, a
And that's a
beautiful
good
piece of
price.
art, creating this art out there by going and buying this thing. But there is a whole bunch of free stuff available for Quest people. I'd love
Hmm.
to see the pipeline of those devs who make things for like Theater Elsewhere have a publishing space where they can, release those things for a couple bucks maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and put some production value into some of those stories because it is there. There is potential to tell whole stories for a couple bucks there. Are we ready to move on, Don?
Yeah, yeah. I was looking through comments. It looks like people are bringing up Dreams. That was another one. RPG Maker. People would love to see something like that coming to headsets. So yeah,
Dreams on PC VR needs to exist.
yeah. No, it
It
does.
should exist. If
It
it doesn't
should.
exist, shame on you.
Yeah. I mean,
Shame
it's
on you, Sony, if that doesn't exist.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and Metal Death here. Quest 4 needs a game like Batman 2, and I agree. I definitely think after the success of Batman, that Meta should be throwing tons of cash at Camouflage right now, going, Gus, give us more Batman, because that's what everybody wants. And obviously, great time to segment. We know that everybody wants it because over the holiday season, we saw a huge influx in the players in Batman Arkham Shadow. I mean, it has now passed over 1 million players. And that was brought up and brought to life by French YouTuber Quest with Matt. And he's been tracking how many people had been unlocking the achievement with, the first achievement in the game, which usually happens in the first 5 minutes. So easy way to track how many players are going there. And it actually jumped up from 400,000 just before Christmas to over 1 million just recently. So that shows us that a lot of headsets probably got populated into the market over Christmas. A lot of new players, redeeming that code. This is a game that is free with every Quest 3S headset purchase and every Quest 3 since MetaConnect 2024. It does not support Quest 2. That's another thing. I really appreciated Camouflage's decision to make this a Quest 3 only game and not capitulate to the lower spec standard that we do see a lot of developers still pursuing with their titles, and then having to do updates down the road to bring it into the realm and the higher horsepower and better graphics of Quest 3. Now, the chart that we had on the screen, I'm sure we might have already gone past the video, but it does show the sharp uptick is completely visible there. And I think another interesting thing that was brought up in the article is that not just this, that Meta Horizon app was actually the number one free app on iPhone on Christmas Day, and Quest 3 was the highest selling console on Amazon for holiday 2024. So
yeah, I saw a lot of people very excited. I was expecting everyone in our comments to go just to be a wall of "I'm Batman" here, because they've done that in the past, and I totally understand it. The role play in Batman is incredible. You step into his ears instantly, and
I love.
The uptake on Quest 3 in particular is such an area to watch.
No, and I gotta say, I love Arlen here. He says, after what they did with Batman, I want the next Camouflage studio to be Wolverine. And oh man, I could imagine just
Wolverine. Yeah, so we've got so let's see, is it Arlen? So Arlen is obsessed. Arlen is also the one obsessed with the controllers that swap out that swap out, and I guess I just put two and two together that is
the shift controllers.
Well, that's the specific example, but like imagine Wolverine controllers, Don. Imagine your things coming out, and you want to feel them actually come out from your wrists, like you like something like that. Like imagine that haptic effect. How do we get there? Where like you feel them almost coming out of your hand.
A glove with like little haptics on every knuckle. That would be you like feel it come out.
Man.
So little tease. Yes. I've got a pair of cool gloves on the way from my CES demo from a company called DiverX that we
Knuckle
will be,
haptics, the biggest feature of 2028 games or 2029 games.
Could you imagine like fingertip, knuckle? I mean, just add those little tiny, transducer or whatever they are, whatever they're using, little motors or speakers or whatever, and just put them in the fingertips, put them on the knuckles, put one in the palm, and you
it's
could
funny
do some
there is a
sensations.
It's a great point, because there's a lot of obsession with like when we go and try these haptic gloves at various conferences, and we will schedule a show very, very soon that is just haptics all the way through. Subscribe to UploadVR's YouTube channel for that conversation. We will get an article on haptics, but there's a very, very deep dive just into haptics we can go down. But we spend a lot. We go to these conferences and we put on these gloves, and they've got like little bubbles on the tips
on the pads of the tips
and through
the
pads of the gloves, and it's fascinating because the little pads are almost like the pixels that you have on a screen, and they end up correlating to resolution, because if you double or triple or 10x or 100x the number of bubbles on your hand, you start getting to like a real effect that can happen. That's like your fingertips recognize.
I had a brain breaking effect at the B-Haptics booth. So it was the first time I had tried the tack gloves, and they have the bubbles on the fingers. And there was one part of their demo where I had to grab this little marble and move it into this slot to power up my Starship engine, this little piece of fuel. Something about the fact that the bubbles touched each other and I couldn't put my fingers all the way together gave me a sensation almost like I had just grabbed that marble, because it was almost the same perfect amount of space between the fingers, and feeling the little buzz from the haptics as I grabbed it, and then not having the ability to push my fingers all the way together like broke my brain. It was like all of a sudden I was really holding this virtual object and I could feel it, and
Fantastic.
That was the missing sensation. It was
So on the PlayStation controllers, the DualSense, they push back at your fingertips a little bit as you pull the triggers in
Yes,
some apps, if the apps are coded for it.
resistive triggers are beautiful.
Resistive triggers are a path on this way. We see things like exoskeleton type gloves that pull back at your fingers to
Hmm.
try to provide the effect that Don is talking about, and the little buzz in between your fingers to try to provide that effect. But here's what I wanted to describe. What you just described, Don, and what's so interesting to think about is what I want is for a punching game. If
Ooh,
there's so many games
and the knuckles.
yeah, I just want the knuckles to have powerful haptic effects,
Ooh, yeah.
right?
Didn't even
In
think
in
about
so many
fighting.
games, like not just it was just like those are punching, but like imagine the hilt
Batman.
of a uh, of a sword
Okay.
as it hits things vibrating from the knuckle just like a bat does, right? Like
Oh,
if you
wow.
think of a
Okay.
bat hitting you, it kind
Yes.
of vibrates from inside the hand. You can maybe wonder if you could do it from outside the hand, or maybe
Well,
you
like I
do it
said, if you had
inside.
one on the
But like,
palm and one on the knuckle and some on the knuckles, then you could have it feel like you're vibrating through the hand as if it was a real sensation.
so forgive me if this is wrong, but or misremembering this fact, but I feel like there is um some I feel like I read this somewhere that the your fingertips are so sensitive that if your fingertip was like the size of the earth and you were running your finger across the surface of the earth, your fingertip could sense the difference between houses and cars.
Okay.
It was something like that. That's how sensitive it is. If you think about how small the the resolution needs to be, like how small the pixels, the
Oh
finger
God.
pixels need to
Yeah.
be in order to provide you that specific haptic effect, like to give you retina resolution, but for the sense of touch, right? It's absurd how far off you need, like how many receptors, how many, like getting to that resolution on your fingertips isn't going to happen anytime soon. But the haptic effect of the punching Batman, or, Batman punching baddies, that could get a lot better, a lot quicker with just, this type of thing that we need.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then of course, if we ever incorporate Arlen's suggestion from last month here, he says, "How about that freestanding Roomba-like punching bag sync up idea?" Where it's like all of a sudden you got the little NPC as the Roomba and with the punching bag on it, and you actually like feel like you're hitting something there.
I love
So
that too. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
maximum immersion. Yeah, sorry, I was
I wonder
playing
if you
too
can
much
get
Crisis.
well, imagine, I'm imagining mini drones, right? Imagine if you get really
Ooh,
good miniature drones that are
okay,
about this size
okay,
and have them flying around you just like Luke Skywalker,
yeah, you
in
could.
his training lightsaber, blinded like in
Oh,
his
you're
helmet.
killing me. You're
Oh,
killing
we
me.
could get that. All right.
Wow,
We've had a lot
that's.
of fun ideas here in this section. This has been really delightful. And this is just a taste of the type of discussion we will have when we get into the haptics discussion. I'm
Oh yeah,
loving a
yeah,
lot of the
yeah.
comments here. I need to talk about Henry's subject soon. Is there anything else you want to talk
No,
about
no, go
before I...
preach. Yeah, go for it.
So Henry Stockdale has been reaching out to all the VR devs he can for a while now here. And if you're a dev out there in the market with a content out there, I highly encourage you to send him an on the record email, hstockdale@uploadvr.com. Make it clear you intend your statement to be used on the record, or if you need to be anonymous, you can do that too, and specify that in your email too. But he's been reaching out to devs across the market to try to understand what is the real state of everything. We sent an email over to Meta today to get their comments, to show them what we found uh, from our first uh, tour of the VR development community.
Yeah.
Um, and we've given them sort of some of the takeaways that we've gotten from that first talk to devs. And we want to see if they have any kind of a statement about the things that the devs are saying. And so this is our process that we've been working on for years. We try to give everyone a chance to respond, try not to take anything out of context, and also not sort of take one person's disgruntled complaint as the way everything is for everyone. You see a lot of reporting at other places of unreleased Apple products Typically those come from disgruntled former employees who didn't believe in the thing in the first place.
Exactly.
The same thing can happen at Meta with a former Meta employee who's disgruntled and like not into their VR strategy whatsoever. So we always have to balance those sorts of disgruntled, frustrated takes, which sometimes have legitimate things in them as well, with the larger realities. Also, the things we hear from Meta PR or from Meta executives is also very rehearsed, very careful. It's usually vetted through legal and through public relations. So it's different than the stuff we get from developers out there. Anyways, Henry has been out there talking to a great number of devs. You can also, I mean, if you're even in our comments, feel free to say it on the record here, how you feel about the market, um, and feel free to share these things. We've been, there's devs who see loss of sales. There's devs who see loss in attention to their content. And if you follow the arc of history, this is just me speaking. This isn't Henry. They went from Quest 1 to Quest 2 to Quest 3 and set this expectation up that the market was going to get bigger each generation. Market one,
Yeah.
Quest 1 was this small. Quest 2 was this much bigger. Quest 3 and Quest 3S should be even much, much larger. But what we're finding and what we're hearing from a large segment of devs is that their sales aren't following that curve upward, even when Meta might be on that curve itself to a certain degree, even if. But we went over this number, like they're big. Go watch our VR download where we dove into the sales numbers from last quarter with Meta, where they reported their record revenue, but the record revenue still wasn't a huge increase from what they had done the prior year. So there's so many moving parts all happening at once, and we're being methodical about it. We're going through it, and I'm being very upfront with your audience as we work through these things. I think our audience knows that we're very informal in this chat and the way we talk about things, while we get a little bit more formal when we go to our write-ups.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be true when we get into Roto here as well. That's why it took us so long for us to kind of work through our write-up about Roto VR. So I know, Don, has anyone commented any questions on this subject while I've been talking?
Just Arlen, he's always got thoughtful comments on that. And one of the reasons is it's so hard to find anything on the Meta Store at this point. I mean, it is so really interesting. I factory reset my headset the other day. I normally I launch apps from my PC browser or my phone, or I do a lot more PC VR stuff. But it was interesting to me that even in my Meta app on my phone, if I, or I'm sorry, in my headset, if I go to my library, the first tab has Horizon World at the bottom that look as if they were something that I downloaded and installed on my headset. And I was sitting here racking my brain because I just did a factory reset going, was this something that I tested a long time ago and I just told it to reinstall it? Or why is this in my library as if it's a app that I own? It's a Horizon World. If I wanted to see them or put them in my library, I would have put them there. And then, of course, what he's referencing is something that we have talked multiple times about at length, is the hiding of the actual apps in the storefront. It's like you boot up your Meta app, the first thing you see is Horizon World. They're shoving Horizon World down everybody's throats, and it is actually hurting developers that they're doing this. I mean, not being first and forefront in that page when people open that to show me what is the new games that I can buy.
So, and then there is Quest Plus complicating things.
Yes.
It's been brought up in our comments. So this is their subscription program, and the visibility into how much devs are making from that program isn't totally obvious. There are plenty of devs in that program who are making up a big chunk of revenue that they would have lost had they been in that other group, right? If they're in that group that isn't in the Quest Plus program, and now they're seeing their sales go down because Horizon Worlds are eating at this stuff. So one of these things I was just talking with Don or Henry about, what is the difference between a Horizon World and a free app on the Quest Store?
That's a good point.
Ultimately, they feel like the same class of content to me, and the problem is the Horizon, the app version. So like Airspace Defender would be an example if we've got Not Suspicious in our audience. That is controller free hand tracking, so just a hand tracking experience. Can't necessarily do that. Can't go do that because I think they're still requiring controllers over on
They
the
are.
Horizon ecosystem. So you have like one ecosystem that is attached to gamepads, touchscreens, controllers,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have another ecosystem that is being forced to evolve towards hand tracking, while also the game that we just led into this conversation with, Batman Arkham Shadow, is just a super kick-ass hand controller tracking game.
Oh, it is.
Right? Like,
yeah.
just it makes a case for the medium. It makes a case for buying a headset. It makes a case for like just spending 10 plus hours in a headset. They just released the latest update, right, with
They
the new
did.
Game Plus mode, right?
Yes, they did. Oh man, and so much to unpack, and more updates on the way. I mean, they are not finished updating this game. Camouflage has plenty more to come.
So you've got this. So how do you like make sense of all of these things? Like if you're not in the Quest Plus program, how do you make ends meet? If you're,
I don't know. I feel for these developers these days, Ian. It really, I mean, these are humans. They have to eat. They have to put food on their tables. And, being buried behind a bunch of freeware Horizon World content is not helping them. So I've been very vocal about it publicly even. I mean, Meta, come on. These are the people who helped us build VR from the beginning. Please take care of these people.
Rodney's saying Meta needs the flagship esports game.
They had the flagship esports game. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but they shut it down.
I invited Don into that one. Please go on, Don.
Sorry, okay, you're going to get me preaching, man. Look, I'm about to become like preachy gray Don here, but Meta had the flagship of esports games with Echo Arena, and they shut it down. It's like I don't know. Sometimes these companies do things. Netflix. It's like why I'm watching this amazing series, and all of a sudden it's like I'm never going to get another episode because you guys just decided it wasn't that good when everybody else thought it was. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, Meta, come on. You had like the game that everybody wanted to play, that esports leagues formed around. This was some of the first esports for VR, international tournaments, and you killed it.
So we're years on from when we were live in this studio when Meta broke that news that this game, Echo Arena, was being shut down, and it was devastating for the community. It's still devastating. That loss is still, that was people's clubhouse.
Yes.
That was the clubhouse for many people, and Meta just demolished it, threw it away, and didn't have a good answer for where you should go instead. They had terrible answers for where you should go instead. And the question immediately when that happened, right, I published articles from John Carmack. I published community members on that whole situation. So on that issue, watch the area of Orion's Drift.
Yes.
So I think we've got to watch what is happening with Orion's Drift very closely.
I played the alpha or beta of it when it first dropped, and it's not bad.
So that's the Gorilla Tag team's next project, and they have an incredible idea there that they are trying to establish of space station scale communities. And these space stations can be positioned, or even the playgrounds on the space stations can be positioned at different angles to one another. So you can always be looking over and seeing what's happening on another court. And if there's some weird game being played on over there, a bunch of people are climbing a mountain over there. You think about that opening scene of Ready Player One. It's the opening shot of Ready Player One. it's remarkably close to what they're building with Orion's Drift. And you'll notice that I think a couple Meta employees jumped ship from Meta to go help the creator of Gorilla Tag turn that venture, another Axiom, into a proper company where they've earned something like $100 million in revenue. $100 million in revenue. I feel like I need to keep repeating that amount of money.
100 million. Like you should do it in the Dr. Evil voice. $100 million.
Well, I mean, it's like, well, you have to do that to the naysayers.
No,
Like
you
if
do.
you end up with this conversation where like some snarky person was like, I thought VR headsets were dead. And you would have to reply in the Dr. Evil voice, $100 million for Monkey
One
Tag.
million
Monkey
players
Tag.
in Batman. I mean,
Okay,
come
a
on.
stupid idea like Monkey Tag earned $100 million
No, that still blows my mind.
in
personally,
VR.
but-
Think about what's after 100. What gates are behind what's after a Monkey Tag, right, for VR.
Oh,
And you can start shutting up the naysayers with a very simple fact like that.
Don't get me started. Graydon's going to preach. Graydon's going to preach.
All right. So yeah, I appreciate the esports conversation. We are going to be watching the esports area. It feels like Meta is trying to force an esport out of Horizon Worlds. It does feel like we're watching that happen, but I don't see it. I don't see the esport there. I haven't seen any. I've gone into those games. It becomes it just doesn't feel responsive enough to be really competitive.
Serious competition in there. No, I don't. And so.
Oh, people are mad at me for calling the gorillas monkeys and not apes. I apologize.
Well, okay, so they're
apes strong together.
But it's called Gorilla Tag. I mean,
All right.
So, I don't know. Anyway,
I didn't mean to besmirch the primate community.
So real quick,
and I do want to get my primates right.
I do want to answer this question, and it gives us a chance to make a little pitch here. So Carl Wright is asking, did you guys get the 5090? No, Carl Wright, we did not get the 5090. But if you guys all want to become members of both the website and the channel here, maybe we could get 5090s. I don't know. So
I haven't seen Daniel Leeper out there trolling us in the comments.
I haven't seen Daniel
with $5
today.
towards your 5090.
Yes, there you go.
We did talk to a freelancer who was looking at it.
And we will hopefully have some coverage. Maybe.
What I wanted there was video of what a 5090 does in a couple specific games that people at home could see. Okay, if I got a 5090 and I ran all the mods in this specific game, this is what it would look like.
And so far, nothing really challenges it. So I'd be interested to see if there is any diminishing return on a 5090 at this point. Now, maybe this time next year, I could see, maybe we're going to start seeing some stuff that might challenge the 4090. But at this point, I think 4090 is still a very, very, very capable card. And yeah, Free Sky Flight Sim 2020 would challenge it. I don't know about 2020, maybe 2024. But
Jack B.
Mr. Lord Beavis, Jack B.
Jack B is talking about swapping a 3090 for a 5090.
Ooh, now that would be a
they're
big
planning to do AI remastering. That's interesting.
Okay.
I was joking about this with I think James out there in our audience, where it's like this is going back to my Blu-ray disc situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could you could let the companies get you a 480p stream that they upscale up to 4K using some, very clever AI upscaling system somewhere in the chain, or you can pop in a Blu-ray disc at 4K and enjoy it without a network connection. And like David would fight me on the fact that network is winning over on VR download. We'll have that argument. But I think Don is also in my camp of loving the physical media a little bit too much.
I do. I love my physical media, I mean, it's like, I don't know, I'm a collector, so it's like I've spent years of my life collecting this stuff. I even I think in the Crisis write-up I did, I even mentioned dusting off my old CD. It's like I didn't have to go buy it on Steam. I had the CD still, the CD-ROM. So.
All right. So I think we should move to so we got a lot of Batman fans out there. If there's any more Batman things, let's talk about Batman here and get those Batman comments out there. We love Batman. We will have more coverage of Batman in the near future. I'm loving Arlen's crusade for for a Wolverine. And
Yes,
I
Wolverine
guarantee
would be
you, next
amazing.
time we get Ryan Payton on the record, the game director over there at Camouflage, we will ask him about Wolverine, and we will ask him about your haptics idea of transitioning, from hand tracking to controller tracking, because we know you're obsessed with it. We'll have more on Batman. I don't know if there's anything specifically on Batman that we should bring up. But all this conversation about the graphics cards is really, really fun.
Hmm.
Because like, how many in our audience have never owned a graphics card, like a literal
That's true.
discrete on its own graphics
I
card?
mean, or installed one. I mean, it's like, these things are, if you're wanting to seriously push pixels on your PC, this is what you need. I mean, you need a high end GPU, and it will absolutely be noticeable in VR. Like when you start playing on a 4090 versus, a lower end spec. I think I went from a 2080 up to my 4090, and it was like night and freaking day. I mean, like just instantaneously. Oh my god, I can super sample everything and push these pixels to like incredible degrees of clarity, and it just blew my mind.
If Rockstar made Grand Theft Auto 6 VR compatible, then VR would probably become mainstream. I
Oh,
appreciate the
without a doubt.
sentiment. Um, the issue, or what we're watching is, so let's watch Don's coverage of mods
Yeah.
evolve over the course of the year. Don already was off on that direction himself, but I'm sort of looking at the direction he set himself on and going, please go as far down this rabbit hole with our community
Oh, I will.
as humanly possible,
I love
because
mods.
there's so you take a game, you take a you, t- you take a game that's $5 on Steam or GOG.com, and then you download that to your system, and then you go to a GitHub repository and you download that to your system, and then you put those two you put that package of files inside your VR headset, and suddenly you've got a VR game. And that feels to me open,
Yeah.
number one. And it feels to me like the right path. Like, not just, it feels to me future proofed.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's something again and again that I come back to as, gosh, my Oculus Go doesn't start up. My Gear VR, good luck. My
Yeah.
Quest 1 has bitten the dust. My Quest Pro's controller doesn't work. My Quest 2 ate shit at Christmas. I'm sorry for the cuss word,
Yeah,
but like,
but it
that's
did.
what
It
happened,
did.
and I'm mad about it still. So I've got a new Quest 2 over there in a box, right, that I need to unbox and bring online. And like, that's a thing I wanted to hand off to people to play with,
Yeah.
like to like, I wanted to share the joy of VR and get them on this path that everyone else is on. And I can't do that with this legacy hardware. I can do it maybe with a Rift.
No,
I
I
can maybe
hate.
do it with a Vive. I
Yeah.
could, like these old PC based systems that still work with a lot of these modded games. Like,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of this whole system.
Well.
And when you take a step back from the meta funded stuff,
Hmm.
you're still left with a bunch of VR ready games that will always be VR ready
Oh,
games.
yeah. Yeah. And when it's kind of funny because I know you weren't really talking about depreciation there, but like just hearing you say things like Gear VR brought back to mind last week when we were interviewing McNeill on the dev stream. I really, and I could have done it. I know how to do it from my old days with lunchtime with my Gear VR. If that headset would have still been able to be used, I could have actually shown footage of like his very early games like Astraeus and Tactera and things like that. Or as we are focusing on mods, I could have shown some of the very early Team Beef or Dr. Beef mods at that point. I mean, like the original Quake mod, the original Doom mod that were the first ones that we saw from him coming on to Gear VR. I mean, that's where a lot of these mods got started.
So
So,
Metal Death is saying that unfortunately the Take-Two boss doesn't like VR, and Epic Games, the head of Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, has been on record with
mhm.
some disparaging comments on VR. I last put him on the record at a one of their GDC events where they do the State of Unreal, and I cornered him and said, "Can you go on the record about VR and AR?" And he's like, "No, I'll talk about AR."
Yeah.
Finally, after I pushed him a couple times, and I printed his entire statement. You can go Google like Tim Sweeney Upload VR GDC, and it should pop up his screed on uh, why they will be there for augmented reality. He said it again and again. He was very clear. We will be there for augmented reality. Um, and Epic Games Store supports VR games. You can
Mm-hmm.
go through some things like Tetris connected, and there's other things
Yeah.
with VR modes all the way through on the Epic Games Store. But it's this openness system. But Sweeney is on the record as also making some like veiled comments about Fortnite and how until VR can support the movement system that you see in Fortnite, it'll just never be as fun. That like it will never reach as many people as, I don't know, third person comfortably tossing your character across the landscape is going to be for VR gaming.
I don't agree with that. It's
It's a nuanced thing. He's not like I get it. So what we're seeing is that the rabbit hole Don is going to go down as I watched you on stream flip the camera in which game was it that had the third person camera.
Jedi. It's actually a few of the Tomb Raider, Beef Raider features that where you can go third person, first person on the fly, and then the Jedi Knight series also features that.
So we have Simon from Team Beef in this studio years ago talking about why doesn't Meta like more formally support your work? Why isn't your stuff in the store? And then Flat to VR took those reins, right? So Flat to VR is doing that job for Team Beef to a certain extent.
I know John Carmack tried to at one point was going to try to put the Team Beef stuff on the store or mentioned it.
And Don, okay, so Don's like the buttons he's pressing to change camera views. Imagine vignetting at a system level in these modded games. And vignetting is this feature that changes your field of view down to a little itty bitty tunnel. If you go back years and years, you see a game like Eagle Flight, this game from Ubisoft that ran on various headsets. You're soaring over France. You're an eagle soaring over France. And as you bank left and you bank right, your vignette, your field of view diminishes. So all you see is this little sliver of your landscape straight ahead. I could play that game for 2 hours and be pretty comfortable while I would get sick in Boneworks within about that same span of time. In 40 minutes, I will be sick in a very, very quick amount of time. The Boneworks people won't put in vignetting, but a modder could put this vignetting feature on top of Boneworks for you, where Boneworks would be a lot more comfortable for me over the course of 3 or 4 hours of playing Boneworks. If every time I press the forward stick to move forward, my view goes like this. I'm moving, and then I get there, and then my view goes back like this. That optional feature could be in most of these ports, most of these games that you're playing, Don. And then with the third person to first person switchover, you could have some dynamic cameras built for like people that get sim sickness like me, right?
Yeah.
I could switch to third person when doing a somersault.
And I'll tell you, it's magical. I mean, I think you'll probably remember this from when we first covered Beef Raider. Another thing that you said, and I know we had conversations about that we both really like in mixed reality games is the ability to resize and go to that diorama scale. Imagine playing Tomb Raider that way. I mean, because you can. You download the Beef Raider, you can literally go into mixed reality, make it a diorama, play it from a third person perspective. It's magical.
Yeah. Well, the wonderful discussion here, very in depth, that we're going to keep touching on these subjects again. I think it's time to talk about why you are spinning throughout this show, Don.
Yeah, sure. So let me turn this back on here. Watch the battery died as we've been sitting here the entire time. No, it hasn't. So, all right. So, my spinning here is brought to us today by the Roto VR Explorer, as I just kind of quickly or slowly spin around, but just by the turn of my head. See, just a little tiny turn makes me spin very slowly. Fast turn makes me spin pretty fast. So I've had a lot of fun over the last couple of months. We actually got the chair at the end of November last year, and the big back half of the year, unfortunately, we kind of had to put the review or the hands-on, as we're kind of doing today on the site and here on the show, on hold a little bit. And I'm kind of glad we did, because it gave me a chance to really get to know the ins and outs of this thing, and also a chance to meet the team when I went to CES and talk to them about some of the upcoming comfort and quality of life mods that they've got for the chair. So if you're not familiar with it, what we have here is an official made for Meta product. Has the sticker right on the back, says made for Meta. It is a chair. Now, the chair is not cheap. It is priced around $800. So, you know, it is not in that same vein as your, you know, gaming chairs that you would see out there. But the reason for that is it is motorized and it has haptics. So basically, when you get this thing, it is also a little heavier than your standard chair. The box comes in weighing at about 75 pounds. So if you're gonna order one, we do recommend have somebody there, have a dolly, you know, because it's not something that you're gonna want to pick up and maneuver into your space. Now, once you get it built, it's nice. It has wheels. You can wheel it all around the house, but you know, that initial setup, you're definitely going to need some muscle to get that box where you want it. So as you can see, you know, in the article, I've got a little unboxing there. The setup took about 30 minutes, you know, from start to finish. It wasn't a horrible setup. They've got a really nice little included, you know, pamphlet that you can follow. There's a link in there to a video that you can watch that shows you how to set it up. If you've ever built any standard office chair, it's really no different other than bolting the haptics underneath the seat and, you know, installing the motor at the base. So there's that. Now, one of the cool things about it is I wasn't expecting the motion to be as fluid as it is, and it's actually kind of nice. I mean, you know, if I turn, it's very smooth as it rotates, as hopefully you can see being translated into my avatar, and the stoppage is also smooth. It kind of has a nice little slowdown there at the end that just kind of puts you right where you want to be. So why that's important is that, well, not only gaming, I can use this for productivity. So we've talked about this on the show quite a few times, where wouldn't it be cool to have that Minority Report kind of thing going on, where I've got all these windows surrounding me, or really wanted to use this on our stream with McNeill playing Darknet the other day, because imagine how cool it would be in a game like that to just rotate my head and look at all the different pieces going around me in a 360-degree
Wait,
sphere.
can you do that again? Because that looks so like you just spun 360 degrees. Did you physically do that, or was that the
No, that's
roto?
the chair. That's just me just turning my head. I just turn my head to the right
And then
or
stop,
left,
like, and you can stop on a dime like that.
and I
Like
can
it's
stop on a dime.
fascinating because like I'm seeing it in our
Small
audience.
movements.
So Onakazi had a comment up here, and I'm curious if the Roto VR people are out there watching us or not.
I'd let them know that we were going to be streaming this today. I talked to Steve Corrigan, so hopefully they were going to join.
So let us know if you're out there. Let us know if there's any comments or questions. But there was this like Onakazi comment that was just like, I find this thing to be of absolutely no interest to me, and when I try to find a use case that it would be practical, I cannot fathom one. And then you get to 4 comments later, and Onakazi, I'm there with you. I felt what you're saying as Don was assessing this hardware, and Don wrote it up. He captured video. You did it on stream showing this thing, and it's still hard to grasp until you did what you just did in our studio, and until I saw this comment from CJ. This chair would be fun as a tail gunner in a World War II bomber or in the gunner seat in like
Okay.
the Millennium Falcon.
I'm glad he said that, because that brings up something that I was going to talk about today, that I bring up heavily in the review. So when I first got the chair, that's the kinds of games that I had just imagined right off the bat. I'm like, oh man, flight games and driving games and being the tail gunner in that back of that bomber, something like that would be really cool. Until I remembered, as a motion simulator enthusiast myself, who does do full motion simulators in my own home, you need something called motion compensation in order for those experiences to work. And I kind of explained that to Ian today as, okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm looking directly at our cameras and our little monitor TV without motion compensation. So imagine I'm driving a car, okay, and I got my steering wheel here, and this chair turns as I turn my head, right? So if the steering wheel's here and I turn my head and the chair turns away from that steering wheel, all of a sudden I'm just rotating inside the cockpit of my plane or my car. So without motion compensation locking my viewpoint, locking the VR world to my forward facing viewpoint, it's not going to be viable yet for the kinds of games that you think you would want to play in this chair. Okay, so racing and flying games, you can do them, but it's just you're not going to have the motion on. It's just going to be sitting on a slightly uncomfortable stool for rumble. Okay, and I'll get into slightly uncomfortable here in a minute, but they are working on their own motion compensation. And I've talked to the team at CES. It is something that they are in the process of working out. They do have steering wheel mounts and HOTAS tables coming. So, it is definitely forefront in their mind right now that is something that they need to fix.
So to our community, and to Dawn, to the people who make the Roto VR Explorer, we've got a process here that we've had to sort of develop in real time how we cover these things, because I'm seeing it reflected in our comments exactly why we did this the way we did it. So I pushed on towards doing this as a hands-on.
Yeah.
We explained to Roto that we're doing this as a hands-on, and this was published as a hands-on. Because the comment here is, Dig, VR looks like the best game for this experience.
Well, it's the only true game for this experience.
It's
currently
the only game that's using the SDK to do what Don is saying in this studio. So he turns left, and the entire virtual world turns left with him. And so when he's in the Dig, cockpit of that digger, it actually moves with him. Well, we need that in a game like one of those flight games.
Right.
I can't think of the really great
here's like
sim game
right
on
here.
Quest.
We got Rodney Wheeler saying this chair was made for Star Wars Squadron, and I would say, yeah, it would be beautiful for Star Wars Squadron once they have that motion compensation, because currently you're not playing Star Wars Squadron in this. I mean, it's not going to happen. First of all, there's nowhere to mount your HOTAS. I mean, if that's the way you play, that's the way I play. Secondly, again, without motion compensation, I'm flying towards that Death Star this way. I look over here, and now I'm like facing this direction out and looking at one of my S-foils. So
I'm imagining in my heart. Okay, imagine a World War II. Like I don't. Forgive me for misremember. Like I don't know how they actually manned the planes in World War II, but imagine, just for the sake of like sci-fi, it works this way, right? Okay, I'm up there in the pilot's seat, flying the plane in my normal seat right here, and I've got a flight stick, and I'm just doing my thing, trying to save the big plane and avoid all the gunfire. You're in the back of the plane in your swivel chair in a gunnery spot underneath the plane with, your big guns right here in your hands.
That might work, actually.
Ready to spin. And then a third person is like running ammo in between the fuselage.
That'd be awesome.
Like they're running back and forth or sending messages. But I love the picture I'm trying to paint here is this chair very clearly helps with the role play of virtual worlds.
No, it
in
does.
theory. In
Yes.
theory.
And
but
some
it
games
needs devs to
really,
support it for that to actually be a useful feature worth $800,
yeah,
right?
no, and really, like when you play Dig, it is. I mean, because it's not using the head tracking puck. Okay, so one thing that makes this chair interesting is it will work with just about any application because the basis of the chair is that you put a puck, you just attach a puck to your headset, or I've got mine up here up on the strap. I was told at CES you don't even have to have it on the top, you can put it on the side, just wherever it's more comfortable for you. But it's that's the only way it works without SDK integration. Now, if a developer like the developers of Dig VR choose to integrate that Roto SDK, then yes, I reach forward and I actually move the chair with the controls of what I'm actually in. So therefore, that motion compensation locks, and it does work. Once they get the motion compensation and the comfort worked out, we will be doing a full review of the chair. I've already talked to Roto. They should be sending us the comfort enhancements that I saw at CES. You won't see those in the video here behind me today, but do go and check out the article. There is a little mini interview with Steve Corrigan from Roto at their booth where he talks about those comfort enhancements. So definitely want to give those a look. Now, that does bring up, I will talk about that a minute. I'm a big guy. I mean, I'm not like super big. I mean, wouldn't call myself like, obese or anything, but I'm 5'11", 260. I mean, I've got a bad back, 3-level spinal fusion. So it's not for me the most comfortable chair. So
Yep.
definitely something to keep in mind also.
So to Roto and Don, we appreciate the chance to look at the chair. You can go check our hands-on write-up that Don has carefully broken down, sort of the limits of where it is today, and I think our audience has that understanding too. Thank you to Gamertag for tuning in.
Oh, hey,
I'm
Gamertag.
seeing our commenters are talking about emulated Mario 64 getting upgraded for VR, and
Oh, yeah.
man, I need that too. And that's again going back to that path that I'm convinced we're the unsubsidized path, right, to
Yeah.
VR, the path that's just fan driven edits. I want to go back to that subject we talked about a little bit before, right? Like, um, there's a certain category of executive who understands the power of simulation, of like what it's like to feel like you're in the driver's seat of a Ferrari at home with a VR headset. Like there's a couple people I think at Apple that are in that category. I assume the executives at Meta include some of those people that love high-end simulation stuff like that. Um, and it's like there's so many, like what was the number? Something like 10% of flight simulator folks are logging in on VR, which
Yeah,
is
about.
higher than the percentage, much higher than the percentage of people who use Steam VR out of the overall
Yep.
Steam ecosystem. It's like, these deep sim games give you a serious reason to put on the headset. And so to Roto and to our audience, we will probably visit Roto again as soon as we see a big tier game
Yeah.
attached to it that uses the motion compensation, that really gives people like a reason to go out and consider
Or
buying
if
this
they do the
package.
external motion compensation that allows for Flight Simulator 2024 or Assetto Corsa Evo or
It,
something like that.
if
So
you happen to be like one of those people who's like a fan, if you know how that there's those fans of rail cars and railroads, if you're that
mm.
type of person but about diggers and about digging holes in the
Oh yeah,
ground,
you can't get better
maybe,
than this right now. I mean,
right?
it's like I felt like I was driving an excavator. I mean, which I have driven. I mean, I grew up on kind of like a farm back in the
Yeah,
day.
there's
So
there's like the guy who made the T-Rex. I don't remember this, but there's the guy who was printing out a T-Rex one piece at a time
mhm.
that I think he sculpted in VR.
Yes, I heard about that.
And he drives a digger and excavator, as I recall,
Oh
over
wow.
in like New Zealand. We need to put him in Dig VR with this Roto chair and compare it. That's the audience for this particular product at this time, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to do a
Well,
review when
now
the simulation is enhanced for just that one game.
now, though, I've got to stress, I thoroughly enjoyed And I mean, I'm talking beyond belief enjoyed playing a couple of games in this chair. Okay. Whether they had native support or not, but it takes a special type of game. And here's what you got to have: flying or swinging motion with gazed based direction orientation. And let me tell you, Iron Man in this chair, as you may be seeing, I guess maybe not. I don't know if we have video going. There was supposed to be video, but Iron Man in this chair blows my freaking mind. I mean, you put your hands back and you feel like you're flying, and you got the rumble going on. Put a fan in front of you. That sequence that we have in the article and the video that I had set up for today, where you're flying, that first sequence where you're flying over the jet as it's crashing and you're trying to save Pepper and the drones are coming at you, was visceral. I mean, absolutely visceral. And then you take it into games like Swarm and Swarm 2 that have that swinging mechanic. And something about, Ian, something about when you hit the apex of that swing, you naturally turn your head, because I'm going to turn around to come down on the downswing. So it's a natural thing that you would do anyway if you were swinging. And you turn your head and you feel this chair rotate you very quickly to that next position. And then you start that downward thrust on that swing. Ooh, you better have some good VR legs. But let me tell you, if you do, those physical sensations that you start feeling playing these games are pretty damn magical. I mean, because you really do get that sensation of free flight in Iron Man, or that sensation of swinging. One that I want to try swinging, actually, Windlands. I didn't even think I need to try Windlands in this, because the swinging games right now for me are some of the best experiences I've had.
Yeah, I'm glad we covered that, and that is a very, very interesting exception to the earlier, it only works with one game rule, and I still don't know if there's enough there to make a recommendation for anybody out there.
No, and I do at the end of my article. I mean, we both agreed on that. Right now, with one natively supported game and a catalog of just, a few games. And now, no, I'm going to take that back too. It's okay for also games like Batman and first person shooters was a different thing. Once I got used to them, being able to just turn my head and face an enemy, I mean, it definitely increased my scores. But is it worth $800? And I know we've gotten pushback every time we've mentioned it on the show here. My swivel chair and my feet and Flintstone power do just as good of a job at this point. So I really think that it is right now a very specialized market. So the people that I might recommend this for is that one use case that I started talking about in the very beginning: productivity. So if you are sitting here with a VR headset on and you do want to surround yourself with monitors and you want to be able to just spin around, and have like 15 different monitors around you and have an easier way to just quickly interact just by looking at those monitors and having the chair face you towards them, I could see that as a viable use case.
I'm sorry, gaming, Don. I've spent the whole time. I love it. I've spent the whole time fantasizing about a new kind of airline that should exist in the future, where first class puts you in these gimbal chairs, these chairs that rotate you, and you go and sit there, and it looks like Nolan. It's Sorrento. It looks like his pod in Ready Player One.
Well, I tried one of those like at CES, something similar.
So imagine first class on a flight is that, and you go and sit down there and you put your VR headset on, and then the whole 6-hour flight, you're just, exploding bogeys below the plane, right?
That would be absolutely amazing, man. And I Rodney Wheeler, you've just blown my mind. I never thought of that, actually. Attach the puck to the HOTAS throttle so the chair moves only when you move the ship. Actually, you probably wouldn't want it on the throttle. You'd need it on the stick, but that might actually work. You could just put it right here on the top of your
kind of a chunky
stick
thing, right? What's the size of that little puck?
Not big. No, not really big at all. Probably, I'd say, about an inch by inch, like circle, so.
My apologies if I used any military jargon incorrectly there. I'm
Exploding to I
yeah.
don't want to know what that
No,
means
I
in
don't want to know
UK, man.
what I actually said there. Are we ready to talk about our last subject for today?
I think
And
so. I think
yeah,
so.
let us know if you've got any comments as we move into the last section.
I
We
don't even know
always
how
love
long we've been
seeing.
going because the counter's not on the
I
TV
know, and I don't
today.
know how many people are tuned in, but it is
I
a very
know we're
active
like
commenting.
blind. We're like blind in here. I didn't even know that we were actually broadcasting until I saw chat. So
Apparently, bogeys. Oh, bogeys mean boogers. Yeah, that's right, Ron.
okay,
Ron Weasley telling me about his bogeys. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
bogers.
Thank you, Beck, for reminding me of that.
Yep. All right,
Yeah. So share this link out with other people as we talk about
please.
this last subject, and all our regular viewers. Thank you for tuning in. All of our time traveling viewers, our silent viewers, everyone who's listening to us on audio. Thank you for tuning in. Uh, we've got a lot going on this channel, and we always appreciate when you share it out. The late night shows I love. We've got a lot of our regular viewers who come in for the late night
I
shows.
was surprised to see the regulars that late, like unannounced, late on a Friday, Saturday night. Sorry, I said Friday when I opened the stream too. I was bad, so
But
it
like
was really
I need
Saturday.
you because you guys are always there and like ready to tune in with us. You're going to be like enforcers of the vibe of the community and
Yeah,
the different show, like explaining when Don is going and spending 30 minutes at 1 a.m, go through some modded VR game, you're going to need to explain to the rando in some random country of the world that, Don isn't answering questions right now, but you could tune
yeah.
in on VR Downloader, VR Gamescast, where we try to cover those questions. Because yeah, it's such a weird,
Well,
different
I
vibe
do try
to,
to stop like in between.
and
Like I
those were
did do
fantastic.
breaks. I
But
did
yeah.
like chat breaks and stuff. So and yeah, please let us know if you guys want to see more crazy ideas like that. I just again, I love being live with y'all. I love interacting with our viewers. I love interacting with new viewers who might be joining us for the very first time. People who are just curious about VR and what we do in VR. So please.
Davin Bigelow telling us that the chair can provide anti-turbulence comfort so you
Mm,
can feel safe as the plane enters the mega hurricane. Man,
oh,
all
that would
right.
be
Don't get
messed
me
up.
started on my idea for a VR-based weather show. Okay,
Oh boy.
that's a whole 20-minute thing. All
Well,
right.
that we'll get to that when we get to like VR News
Okay.
Network, and then we'll have like the weather channel in
Oh
VR.
yeah,
Yeah,
you got an anime avatar presenting the firestorm in Los
there you
Angeles
go.
and the floods in the Midwest, and yeah, I think that's what the world needs. All right.
Yes, yes. So
All right.
anyway, last subject. So
Yeah, let's talk about our talk with E. McNeill. So we had E.
absolutely,
McNeill here as the voice from heaven, out there brought in by Beck as part of the pantheon here. And then E. McNeill walked us through three of the worlds that they made. So
yes,
the god of those three worlds, Darknet, Iron Strike, and Iron Lights. And what was fantastic here, Don, we're going to have to recreate on further shows. Beck pulled off amazingly live on stream. Is Darknet is a single player game from the
yes.
Gear VR days, and you just played that up for 20 minutes or something as a single player game. People in the audience wondering how you're like what the strategy of it is. Uh, E. McNeill walked us through
It's
this
beautiful.
very real human journey of what it feels like to be an indie dev for 12 years. And I'm going to have to recap the Bitcoin situation here
Yeah.
for our audience, because I led our article with this detail and I covered it in the game. But Don goes into this game. Darknet from 2013 and 2014 is when the game was first
It was
built.
technically the remaster, so it was
Yeah,
technically from 2025 or
yeah.
24, but
So you can go play it right now. Darknet Remaster
yeah.
2025 on the Quest store if you've got a modern Quest headset. And in fact, you're supporting a dev who just put himself on leave to
Oh yes,
go.
have his first child.
Yeah. So he is those sales that you go and buy his games, Iron Strike, Iron Lights, and Darknet, you go buy his games right now. You are literally supporting a dev
That's
through
diapers, y'all.
their leave as a parent. And
Yep.
I don't know. I like that's not a that is what I'm being honest about what it is. You can go do that right now. So if you've got the money to spare, if you want to go see the early days
Oh yeah.
of VR gaming, you can go get Darknet Remastered, which is arguably the first VR game for modern consumer VR headsets. It came out for the Gear VR and then every headset afterwards. And then he released it right before going off on leave. We tore up our schedule. We're putting together a schedule of devs to come into our studio and talk to us. And I talked to Beck and Don. I'm like, he's leaving. We should probably try to get him so that we can get this mark in history before he leaves. And, I'm being as upfront and obvious with our audience about everything here as possible. You can literally support an indie dev in a very, very real way by going and checking these games out right now while this dev is out on break. So Darknet here. Bitcoin is this virtual currency in the game that you collect, and then you spend Bitcoin in Darknet to buy weapons that you use to hack the net. And fantastic game. It's always been brilliant. But I talked about the Bitcoin with E. McNeill, and I asked him, you built this game in 2013 and 2014 originally. Did you ever buy any Bitcoin? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin was $1,000 per Bitcoin back in 2013 and 2014. And now if you go look up the price of a single Bitcoin, it goes for about $100,000.
It's astronomical.
So if he had 5 Bitcoin back in 2013, that was worth $5,000 back then. That would have been 5 Bitcoin worth $500,000 today. Go check out that interview as we discuss the feeling of what that means to have to grapple with that. He is able to sleep at night because he assures himself he would have sold those Bitcoin in the 10 years before it's $100,000 now.
No, I think I told my little story on that. I actually had somebody offer me a Bitcoin back then to do a video. And I turned him down. I was like, I want this crazy, funny internet money, whatever. I take real money. I'm sorry. And oh man, every day I just sit there and why did I not just get that and sit it there, just keep it as a novelty, and then I would have been rich. But I will.
When the government gets your private key, they have a perfect record of every illegal act you have on the blockchain. Yep. All right, that's the extent of us talking about cryptocurrencies on the show. Was the virtual cryptocurrency that E. McNeill did not acquire for himself back when he made this game in 2013. And here he is today, eking out life as an indie developer instead of a cryptocurrency czar or whatever.
Like I say, it was so cool. Like we actually even crossed another barrier on that stream because he joined me in the games.
I was going to get to that. So this is going to be our model for the future. If you're a multiplayer dev, if you have a lot of content that you've built for VR, Don and E nailed it here.
Yeah, that was great.
We started in Darknet, then we went in. Don went straight into Iron Strike, and that was a great call to go into Iron Strike, his most recent game. So this would be his most amount of learnings from his earliest, least amount of learnings, like the first game he started, to let's see what he's like what he's doing today. And so that's what we got to see in Iron Strike. And then he put on the headset himself and joined. Don, our guest in the studio, teleported 2 levels deep into virtual reality with Don, and you guys ventured between Iron Strike and Iron Lights together, and you learned about both games, the very specific decisions that E made with how physics work in that experience. Fascinating stuff to learn about as a dev.
Totally. Yeah, and we want to keep it going. So, this will be a great time to give a pitch. If you are a developer, hit us up, Tips at Upload, find me or Ian on socials. We would love to talk to you. We do have, I'm not going to announce who they are just yet, but we do have some very cool dev streams coming up in the future. Now, we do those as members first. So that is a great pitch for membership once again here on the channel, or at UploadVR. We're working it out how our website members can also join in those member force streams right now. So be on the lookout for that. But definitely make sure you have notifications on, because you want to get notified when these streams happen if you're a member. That way you can see them first, and then we post them out the next day. Ian writes an article. That way everybody can share in the fun. But highly recommend these streams.
Oh my gosh, Davin has a very large family out there. Good luck to you,
Oh, Lord.
Davin. Our heart
My
goes out
gosh.
to you in handling that. And yeah, I imagine that is Davin tuning in. One of those midnight viewers is going to be Davin out there watching
Well,
you at the weird
I will
hours.
make sure that we do more streams for these guys that need that in the middle of the night.
I like Jack's comment. Crypto beget NFTs begets AI tokens, which will beget who knows what the next hustle will be, but Nvidia's stock will probably rely on it too.
Probably.
I love it. I love it. And
that's true.
That's a very funny comment, but it also is very descriptive of the backstory upon which, Ian McNeill's story took place, right? He started off on the very earliest headsets that were, remember Virtual Link was this connector that was going to come straight out of the graphics cards for our VR headsets, and then all the VR headsets suddenly overnight were being built for a very different purpose than VR headsets, right?
The only time I regret not having Virtual Link was when the Sony headset stuff came to PC VR, because if you had Virtual Link, you didn't have to buy the box. You could just plug straight in. So
Davin saying my only regret is reduced VR time, but my oldest playing VR warms my heart. Yeah, the thing I was just talking to Don about, and it's very fascinating to have right now, is the latest generation of AI capable cameras. Will do all of the people sensing, animal sensing, package sensing for you, and then give you a timeline to scrub back and forth. So like if you want to keep eyes on a playroom, for instance, that you want to see what's going on in a playroom, or in a cat room, an animal room, you could say, okay, camera, only show me the animals in this room. And then you just scrub through every single action that the animals had in that room. It's fascinating to think of the privacy implications for a family, for having, I don't know. It's weird that the latest wave of AI cameras are here, and I've been wondering how, like, when you go into VR headset, what's the right way to keep an eye on your family in the real world, I guess.
I don't know. It'd be interesting if somebody had an app
question.
like where you could just double tap, how we double tap to go from
immersive
to reality. Like just make a little side view app where it just puts a little thing where I can see my camera at any time up in the corner.
Well, Don hasn't experienced the people detection on Apple Vision Pro yet, but it is pretty delightful when the Apple takes care of that for you, right? As soon as someone looks at you and addresses you, it's like they pop out of the VR experience at you.
With computer vision, I don't see why, like in Quest, if my wife if she walks inside my boundaries, or my kids, and looks directly at me and starts talking, why can't the microphone detect there's been speech directed towards me and somebody's like in my camera's field of view? So therefore, hey, give me a little notification. Somebody's trying to get a hold of you. Tap my headset. Hey, honey, what's going on? Oh, okay. And I'm back.
Well, and go watch VR Download where David and I dive into these questions. One of the questions we got into on the last VR Download was whether older Quests are going to keep decreasing in are going to decrease in their performance, because more of the chip is going to be used to do those types of
I have no
background algorithm checks.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen a lot of that as, each new iteration of the software comes to the Quest ecosystem, the older hardware seems to diminish more and more.
Former True is saying they did an Iron Strike playthrough a week or two ago and had so much fun with Ian McNeill. I really enjoyed watching the playthrough, and it was fantastic. Don had when he was trying to get in there, he was struggling with the gesture system for the spell casting.
The spell casting. And
it was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience, I think, for myself, for Don, and for E, to see that first time user experience of like, oh, maybe I need to like signal to the user just a little bit more which direction those things need
Yeah.
to be casted with.
I think it was a learning experience for both of us, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that brings again a lot of utility to these dev streams because it's not just for you guys. I mean, developers coming on these streams, you're going to get live in the moment feedback. You know, you're going to get a person who's been playing 25 years worth of VR games in your game with you. You know, I mean,
And
you're
it's like when we remove the rabble of like the general the we've seen it again and again in the comments. You don't know how to play the game.
Mhm.
You don't, like, I get it, right? We often don't, because you're seeing us play the game for the first time, right?
Yeah,
Like, we like
yeah,
providing
exactly.
that to people because it's genuine
Oh yeah,
first reactions to experiences. And every single developer can have a different type of weapon handling, a different type of moving through the world. And like sometimes Don is jumping back and forth between three of them, back
oh
and
yeah,
forth.
oh yeah,
In this video you go watch with McNeill and Don, Iron Strike and Iron Lights have dramatically different weapon handling, and it's just the same developer with 2 years of difference
yeah.
of trying to achieve a different problem 2 years later.
No, yeah, it's and they look almost identical. You'd see the game side by side and think, oh well, it's going to be the same in both. And no, the weapon handling is completely different.
Yeah.
So,
And Jonah's saying, I'm happy to do it when I've released my second game in a couple of years. They're still
woohoo!
releasing my first. Yes, love that. And yeah, one of the things we're talking, so Beck put a comment out there, and I think we're ready to end up this show
I think
here.
so. Yeah.
But we're trying to figure out how we can show our shows to both site members on uploadvr.com as well as our YouTube members. Our YouTube members have been so critical
Mhm.
in carrying the conversation through all of our shows. And like I said earlier in the show, when Don is distracted for 20 minutes on a game, you could probably help out a viewer who doesn't know that Don isn't responding to questions right
Oh, I
now.
love that.
And
Sorry,
that's the sort of thing where, yeah.
Farmer True. I gotta read this out because I love that, and that's exactly what Ian was just talking about. First time playthroughs help viewers learn much more than edited videos that remove all the learning curve.
And they help the developer too. That's the
Yes.
critical thing, right? The dev has lost sight of that first time uh, insight, and they don't have the money to user test. They don't have the time to user test.
And yes,
So
CJ7, that is true. That's because I'm always nervous when I'm playing through for the first time. So that is when the Don jokes come out. They're not dad jokes anymore. Now they're Don jokes. So
yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, we will be doing that more on this channel. If you've been with us so far, thank you for your support. Thank you for it going to the future. This community means the world to us.
oh man,
And
so much.
as Beck and Don and David and I do this more and more and more, uh, we realize, like, we look forward to these
Oh, I
conversations
do every week.
as highlights of our week, and I mean that genuinely. Like,
Hmm.
that's awkward to say, like, this is my job, right? I get paid for this, Don gets
Yeah.
paid for this, but
Hey, you
like,
get paid.
I know, right? uh
Serious.
but at the end of the day, like, the internet can be lonely.
It
It
can.
can be lonely to work in VR when you have so many people trying to get paid to let you go visit your friend and watch and do what you want to do with them, right? Like, that's literally what we're reporting on day in
Yep.
and day out. And our audience empathizes with that journey all too well. How many of you have lost hours because some executive out there prioritized something other than you meeting up with a friend and doing what you wanted to do in VR and talking about what you wanted to talk about in VR?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I feel real camaraderie with this community, and
Absolutely, man.
understanding that we're not alone in encountering those issues. And I love it. So I love these conversations, and thank you, Don, for helping grow this. Beck, thank you for growing this, and we are growing this significantly.
We are.
We are bigger than we were last year, and it's the same number of people, and it's only through our hard work of doing this week in and week
Onward and
out with
upward.
you, our audience.
Onward and upward.
We'll see you.
All right, guys.